Greetings, I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to be building this Sd.Kfz 250/1 Alt or Sd.Kfz 253 kit. This is a plastic model in 28mm scale by Rubicon Models. The artwork on the front of the box primarily focuses on the 250/1, but you can also see the 253 in the background, and that's the vehicle I've chosen to build from this kit. The back of the box has a side view of both variants this kit can make, both in different paint schemes. There's also a few paragraphs of information on the vehicle, and an image of the included decal sheet. Inside the box you will find two individually wrapped sprues. These are quite neatly moulded, and as I would expect from Rubicon, the parts are all very sharp and well detailed. I'm no expert, so I can't tell you if they're super historically accurate or anything like that, but they look very good to me. I can't see any moulding errors, and the mould lines should be more or less negligible to clean up. Being that you can build two variants of this vehicle, there are quite a few different parts here. Should be quite a few left over for the old bits box too. There is a driver figure with the choice of two heads, but no commander figure, unless I'm missing another body. But I don't think I am. Not that it bothers me, I pretty much never use the crew figures anyway. What matters is that all these parts look good. The box also includes this set of decals, which we saw on the back of the box. Rubicon decals are quite good, and as usual, there's quite a few options for markings here. And of course, we do get instructions. These are mostly up to the high standards of Rubicon's instruction booklets. It does, however, have a couple of mistakes that I've found. Namely, on the first page, some of the parts labelled A and a number should actually be B and a number. If you don't find what you're looking for on one sprue, it's definitely worth looking for it on the second. I hope they've fixed this in subsequent print runs. Other than that, the instructions are quite good. Let's get to the building. We begin at the lower hull, which consists of these 5 parts. Before attaching those parts though, I'm going to do some drilling. On the left-hand mudguard thing, I drill out the hole in the front outward facing corner. Nothing too tricky here. The same goes for the part for the right side. Though in addition, 2 more holes should be drilled to mount a pickaxe, and you can see where I've done that. This is actually optional, but I figured why not do it. We'll come back to these holes later. I glue on the whole sides that have suspension gear and axle bits moulded into them. This is pretty simple to attach. There's no keying for this part, but the shape of the parts should make it pretty obvious if you're doing it wrong. The gap along the bottom shouldn't be visible during normal use, so it's not really an issue, but I still apply pressure to try and minimize it anyway. Then come the Mudguard Skirty things. There are slots into which these parts should fit very easily. I apply pressure while it's seated properly just to make sure it's hard up against the hull part. It looks like I've got it on neat enough, so I move forward. When removing the parts for the next step from the sprue, I notice that there's a bit of a mislabeling in the instructions. This axe is labelled as A20 in the instructions, when in fact it should be B20. It's not the only part to have this problem, so I guess be vigilant. Another issue was that the pickaxe didn't really fit into those mounting holes. Maybe I drilled the wrong holes out, but I did do what the instructions said to. I trimmed off the middle mounting pin, figuring that this would be enough to clear the axe this should be mounting over the top of. It still didn't quite fit perfectly, there's still a hole there that you can see, but it's good enough. I kind of wish I hadn't drilled the holes out for this. I'd have just left the pickaxe off if that were the case. Fortunately, the other parts were easier to install. I glue this stowage box onto the right hand side of the vehicle, and it goes into place very easily and looks fairly decent. On the other side, a similar part can be glued into place. It is similar in general shape, but instead of a stowage box it's some kind of engine part and has vents. Very simple to install though. Next, I installed a Notec convoy light. This goes into the hole in the top of a rectangular bit and not one of the holes I drilled earlier. It needs a little bit of nudging until it's straight enough and then it's on. Not too tricky at all. I then install the bar things with the little knobbly bits at the ends. The instructions call them booms. Whatever they are there to help the driver see where the corners of the vehicle are, and they're very easy to get into place. The next steps in the instructions are for the internals, and this is mostly relevant for the Sd.Kfz 250/1. The internals will still fit inside the 253 version if you want to do that, but unless you're leaving some of the hatches open, it would be kind of a waste to install all of those parts on a closed vehicle. So I move on to the next step, which is to add the upper hull. This is a simple matter of just placing the part onto the lower hull. There's keying to help position this, and I apply pressure to minimize the gaps. There's still a bit of a gap towards the rear, but it's not too bad and should be very easily fixed with some putty. Now, let's see to filling that huge hole in the front of the vehicle. This is really quite simple to do. The part more or less slots right into place, though I found I had to apply quite a bit of pressure to make sure it would stay pressed into the front of the model. There is also another part that you could use here that doesn't have the headlamps, and there are separate parts for the headlamps, but I liked this one better. Still, it's nice to have options. Next comes the rear door. This is very easy to install. I do kind of wish the opening for this was actually open. That way the door could be modelled open and you could see the interior. If that was possible, I might have been quite tempted to build the interior. I mean, I could probably cut it, but that seemed like a bit too much effort. Now it's time to see to the roof, and I'll be using all these ingredients. First, I glue the rectangular hatch into place. There's nothing tricky to this, and the hinge detail makes it pretty easy to figure out which way around the hatch should go, and then it just sort of slots into place, and looks very hatchy. The round hatch is a bit different. Well, this part itself isn't the hatch, but it is the rotating mount for the hatch. There's a backing part for this which I'm assuming is mostly so that you can have the hatch rotate around so your crew can observe in whichever direction they want, with the 253 being an observation vehicle and all. It won't make a difference visually from the outside, and I don't need hatch rotation, so I just glue the outer part down from the inside. Then comes the actual hatch itself. You get a choice between two of these, one with the smaller hatch also closed, or one with it open, as I've chosen. I glue this into place with the small open hatch facing towards the front of the roof, and then I install these binoculars. These are quite easy to install, though a little bit of nudging was needed to get them to sit in a satisfactory way. I add glue from the inside to minimise the possibility of making a mess with it. Now, the crew can have a look around without the need to exit the vehicle, which I guess is kind of the entire point of using an armoured observation vehicle. Then comes the antenna mount and its protector. I didn't frame this shot very well, but you can see that it more or less just drops into place with the two pins slotting into their corresponding holes. This part does kind of hang over the edge, and I was hoping it wouldn't cause issues with the fitting later. I set the roof aside, figuring that I may have to turn the model upside down, and then begin work on the vehicle's running gear, starting with the steering wheels, or their axle really. There's a tag along the top of the axle part that should slot into the underside of the hull, and it goes together quite easily, though it is kind of a tight fit. Next, the wheels. There's a D-shaped keying for these to ensure that you don't fit them with the flat spots anywhere but the bottom of the vehicle. They go on easily. I like these kind of wheels. They add a nice appearance of weight to the model. Now to assemble some tracks. The inner half of the drive sprocket has a D-shaped keying to it, which makes it pretty easy to get into place correctly. The two outer road wheels aren't really keyed at all, though their mounting pins are shaped such that they fit up against the other road wheels, which does help, but you still have to nudge them a bit so they're straight and aligned with the holes in the wheels behind them. I'm not sure that they have to match, but I think it does look better when they do. With only a little bit of fiddling, the track sets are assembled and can be installed on the model. This is a simple matter of slotting the axles into the holes in the back of the wheels. A little bit of force and they're on good and proper. It's then time to attach the roof assembly I built earlier. This more or less just drops into place. I apply pressure to make sure it doesn't lift up or anything like that, and that's the Sd.Kfz 253 done. Or it would be if I hadn't forgotten to add the towing hook earlier. I missed it in the first step of the instructions because I'm a numpty. There are two towing hooks included in this kit. The one I've used is the more realistic of the two, and the other one is for gaming use. It's got a much bigger pin so that you can hook up a trailer or a towed gun or something like that. I think that's a nice little touch. And now, the Sd.Kfz 253 or Leichter gepanzerte Bearbeichtungskraftwagen is complete. Yep, flawless German. I'm pretty happy with how this model has turned out. It's nicely detailed and I feel like it's a fairly good representation of the real thing. It's obviously the Sd.Kfz 253, but I would have no issue proxying it as the regular 250 version to ferry some infantry around the table or something like that. But I'm sure those who are a bit more anal about having their forces modelled WYSIWYG could probably magnetise the roof parts if they really wanted to. It might be a bit fiddly, but it's certainly an option, or something to try at least. I'm not sure exactly how useful the 253 is in a game of bolt action, but it's cool and something different, even if it isn't useful. There's actually a moderately amusing story with this kit. I was actually intending to buy the new version of the 250/1. I am a bit of a numpty of course, so I ended up with this alt version. Not that I really mind, I probably would have bought it eventually anyway, but the silly thing is I bought this and the expansion kit Rubicon offers to make the Sd.Kfz 250/8, with the gun on top of it. And that expansion kit goes with the new half-track, so I couldn't use it at this time, but I will be doing a video about it soon, so keep an eye out if that's of interest to you. Back to the model I just built. I think it looks quite good, and the detailing is very nice and crisp. All the parts were neatly moulded, and despite a few mislabelings in the instructions, they went together very well and with minimal hassle, and I did quite enjoy the build process. So now my German army has something of a surprise armoured observation unit, which is nice. What do you think? Is it a useful model for a German army to have in bolt action? Let me know what you think in the comments section below, along with any other questions, comments, or jokes you might have. Also, feel free to do all the other things like subscribing here on YouTube, following me on social media, and watching me live stream on Twitch. And if you really like the things I do, please consider helping to support the channel over at Patreon, or maybe purchasing a shirt or a mug or a sticker from my merch stores. Links to all of those things are in the description below. As always, I shall return soon, so until then, be excellent to each other, happy modelling, and thanks for watching. Farewell.